Hello, universe. Recently, I went to the library and checked out this book by H. Dieter Zeh called The Physical Basis of the Direction of Time. And I'm reading this book right now for leisure. So it has a lot of commentary. It's not a ton of mathematical calculation. This is a famous physicist, though. And so there is physics being done, advanced physics being done in this book. But it is not so terse and heavy with calculation. So as you can see here, if I just flip through the pages, there's a lot of commentary, and there's certainly physics and math being done, but there's a lot of physical explanations in between. So that makes it a nice book you can read for leisure rather than an intensive study book. It's also pretty short. It's only 200 pages long. Now, I wanted to share with you some of the great quotes of the introduction here. I've read the introduction and started on chapter 1. And I just got this book a couple days ago, but I already really like it. So I thought I'd share it. I'm pretty excited about it. So there's some cool quotes in here. Eddington from 1928 wrote, "The law that entropy always increases holds, I think, the supreme position among the laws of nature. If someone points out to you that your pet theory of the universe is in disagreement with Maxwell's equations, then so much the worse for Maxwell's equations. But if your theory is found to be against the second law of thermodynamics, I can give you no hope. There is nothing for it but to collapse in deepest humiliation." And Einstein in 1949 remarked, Thermodynamics, is the only physical theory of universal content, concerning which I am convinced that, within the framework of the applicability of its basic concepts, it will never be overthrown." Powerful quotes in the introduction here. I also like this list that he provides. So he talks about symmetries in a deterministic theory. So a lot of our introductory deterministic theories are going to have time reversal symmetries, as he explains in the top of this paragraph. The possibility of compensating for a dynamical time reversal by another symmetry transformation, observable or not, reflects the prevailing symmetry of determinism. Such symmetric violations of time reversal invariance have therefore nothing to do with irreversibility, which forms the subject of this book. All known fundamental laws of nature are symmetric under time reversal after a compensation by an appropriate symmetry transformation, thus defining a combined symmetry. Okay? So he's commenting on the fact that these deterministic theories are symmetric under some symmetry transformation. And however, there are some irreversible phenomena that kind of violate this the symmetry of these laws. And the main thing that violates them, he lists 5 instances of this violation. Okay, so the first that he lists is radiation, then thermodynamics, evolution, quantum mechanical measurement. 5 is exponential decay, and 6 is gravity. So the book kind of goes through a lot of these different subjects and talks about them in the context of time reversal symmetry and how they violate time reversal symmetry and kind of give time a specific direction. At least to our own human consciousness, we experience time as flowing forward. And the second reason, thermodynamics, is the largest one. So the second law, it's ironically the second item that's listed here, and it because of the second law of thermodynamics is so important. The second law, that the entropy, the time derivative of the entropy is always non-negative, is often regarded as a law of nature. In microscopic description, it has instead to be interpreted as fact-like. This arrow is certainly the most general and important one. Because of its applicability to human memory and other physiological processes, it may also be responsible for the impression that time itself has a direction corresponding to an apparent flow of time. So that's a really deep insight here, that possibly thermodynamics might be responsible for our perception of time as having a direction. As though if I were to pick up a cup of water, right, if I were to take this cup of water, okay, and empty it out onto the floor here, then all of a sudden, let me just do it for dramatic effect. I'll do it outside. I don't want to waste too much water, so I won't. But okay, if I take the water, which is confined to this water bottle here, and I pour it out, okay? then as you can see here, the water is going to diffuse into the earth. It's going to interact with the particles here on the ground, okay? And irreversible changes are occurring in the sense that this water, this collection of water particles, is now in a state which is less confined, right? Than it is when it's confined to this bottle here, okay? And so this process of emptying the water, and the water kind of spilling out over the ground and spreading out over the ground, is reminiscent of time itself, and how time has somewhat an irreversible nature, where if I wanted to try and put each of these water molecules back into this bottle, well, maybe I could do that because it hasn't fully spread out here. It's been pretty concentrated on this wooden floor here. But like if I were to slosh this around, for example, and go like this, then as you can see, the water particles have now become, their entropy has increased, okay, their disorder has increased, and in particular, they've interacted with the particles of the floor here, and now all of a sudden, this is almost an irreversible process where it would be very difficult for me. It would require a ton of energy and a ton of an unbelievable amount of energy for me to gather all of these water particles and restore them back to being in this confined state of a water bottle, okay, which is has a more fixed structure, okay, it's more stable, and you could say that it's kind of an analogy. It's not a perfect analogy, but it's an analogy for a low entropy configuration, okay. And so this textbook is in some ways comparing this, making this analogy between entropy, the entropy increasing, and our perceived flow of time. And so the analogy that I just gave of pouring out water on the cement, for instance, might be very closely related to the way that we experience time and the way that we experience it as an irreversible process. So you can think of time itself as kind of spilling out over the ground. Much like the water bottle demonstration that I gave. Obviously, this is an imperfect analogy, but it is a powerful one. It's an analogy that really motivated me when I first thought of it. And yeah, there's a deep connection between the direction of time and our notion of entropy, which is what this physicist is getting at here. Now, chapter 1, I'll just share with you a little bit from chapter 1 here. The concept of time has been discussed since the earliest records of philosophy, when science had not yet become a separate subject. It is rooted in the subjective experience of the passing present or moment of awareness, which appears to flow through time, and thereby to dynamically separate the past from the future. This has led to the formal representation of time by the real numbers, and to the picture of a present as a point which moves in the direction defined by their sign. Okay? So I like this picture of the formal representation of time by the real numbers. Isn't it kind of weird how we just treat the time as a real number line? That is a little bit weird when you think about it. And that's definitely a psychological bias and a human construct to some degree, right? It's clearly more of a human construct than if I were to, for example, measure the width of this board using a meter stick, which I viewed as a segment of the real line. That's a little bit less bias, in my opinion, than using the real line to represent time, right? And obviously, there is this asymmetry in time between the present and the past and the future, which is what this physicist is getting at here. Now, I'll quote another passage from the textbook. So this is in the footnote. Time is neither identical with movement nor capable of being separated from it. This is from Physics Book 4. This may sound like an argument for some absoluteness of time. However, the traditional philosophical debate about time is usually linked to and often confused with the psychological and epistemological problem of the awareness of time in the soul, and hence related to the problem of consciousness. So this is very, very interesting because they're drawing a kind of a distinction here between the physical basis of the direction of time and our conscious perception of time, or our awareness of time, right? How we understand time on a physical basis needs to be different from this philosophical approach. They're trying to separate the two. And these two are not fully separable, of course. We can never fully divorce ourselves from our own subjective and consciousness, but there are ways in which we can circumvent those types of debate. And if we ask the right questions about time, then it's possible to kind of try and view time and the direction of time as a consequence of the laws of nature, right? And I think it's a very interesting idea. Personally, I'm not sure if time should be viewed as on the same footing as space. I like the general relativistic viewpoint that time and space are somehow on similar footing, and that there isn't an inherent preferred direction of time necessarily, and that I think that the direction of time is a consequence of entropy and our human perception as well. I think that space-time should be regarded as a four-dimensional manifold, of course, but this is just my opinion. I find the four-dimensional description of space-time, where space and time are kind of viewed on as one manifold. I really like that approach personally. I think it's very philosophically satisfying, and it just feels right to me, right? But yeah, I think that it's certainly something that I need to think more about, and I've been thinking a lot about it recently. And yeah, I hope that maybe some of you have some thoughts about the direction of time, and maybe you've encountered this subject, or you've studied any thermodynamics or anything like that. So any of your inputs would be greatly appreciated. Have a nice day.